Welcome, everybody. As we said before, my name is Brian Wright. I'm an assistant professor of Islamic Studies at Mohammed bin Zayed University for Humanities at McGill University. And together, we are the co-authors for Yallā Part 3. And so today we wanted to kind of take a look at some of the main challenges that a lot of Arabic instructors face when teaching the Arabic language to non-native speakers and particularly how Yalla deals with that. So we're gonna kind of we have three main goals in terms of our webinar setup today. The first goal is to talk about these common issues. So for example, things like using authentic versus non-authentic reading materials, time constraints and limited language exposure, classroom dynamics, language diversity, aligning materials with standards. That's kind of our first set is to look at the challenges. The next step would be to talk about how the Yalla book series in general deals with these issues and provide a lot of concrete examples that Shokry is going to take you through. And then finally, in the last part, Shokry and I are going to alternate and talk about how the model developed by Shokry and David Nanskavel in the first two books is going to be continued in the third part of the Yalla series. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So the first thing we wanted to talk about is this big question of authentic reading materials. So on the one hand, authentic materials can make learning more engaging and meaningful. Students feel motivated reading things that native speakers read. They gain cultural awareness and get exposure to natural language use. And when chosen carefully, these texts provide comprehensible, meaningful input that support acquisition. Um, Using authentic materials can be a really important tool for teachers. But in compiling a textbook, there's a lot of incentive to use these kinds of materials. However, although they have these very important advantages, using authentic materials can often come with a lot of really serious challenges. So, for example, these authentic texts may contain unfamiliar words or phrases that disrupt comprehension. They can make students feel confused and frustrated. The words and expressions used can be culturally connected, can be connected to particular context. It could mean something to a native speaker environment, but the same phrase could mean something different to a non-native speaker. It could include culturally biased content. People that are not used to the Arabic speaking background might have an issue. Authentic materials also might not always serve well as models for writing and speaking, particularly when the level and context is very different. And most importantly, unlike constructed reading texts, authentic materials are often too difficult for teachers to modify to suit learners' needs or objectives of the lesson. And to give kind of a concrete example of that, I wanted to give an example of just one sentence of a grammar point. This is the conditional sentence. And this is just something that I personally pulled from a news report last week off of Reuters. And if I wanted to look at this as an instructor and present this to students as an example of the conditional sentence in application, the conditional sentence itself, the two halves of the conditional sentence are in the second line highlighted for those of you who do not read Arabic. But in order to reach that conditional sentence, which by the way is flipped from its traditional presentation, I would have to go through and unwrap a whole set of levels. You know, you need to know this is a statement about the government shutdown and that the advisor of the White House has said that the Trump administration will begin firing federal employees if the negotiations with the Democrats in Congress didn't work or didn't lead to anything. So in order to break that apart, I would need to talk about different vocabulary, the American political context, a few grammar or verbs depending on the level of the students, and all of that in order to get to a kind of core grammar point, which I want to talk about, which is the conditional sentence. So although this is an authentic material created in a native speaker environment, it comes with a very serious challenge that like the actual grammar point that I want to talk about as an instructor gets lost in the mix of me trying to unwrap and unfold all of those layers to get to the actual point that I want to talk about. So that's one of the big issues that we look at when we talk about authentic materials. The next issue that we all face when it comes to dealing with the Arabic language classroom is time and limited language exposure. If you happen to be teaching in a native language environment, like in Egypt or elsewhere in the Middle East, you're at an advantage. But for most of us who end up teaching in North America or in Western Europe, this becomes a major trial for all of us, that students do not have that exposure to the language outside of the classroom. And we have a very precious sect of, let's say, 3 to 5, depending on the university setting, 3 to 5 hours of contact per week when it comes to an Arabic class, whether it's 3 hours in the classroom or 1 or 2 hours of a lab. Um, that means that we need to do as much as we possibly can to make that limited time fruitful and effective for our students. And as a result, we need materials and methods that maximize our time and encourage learning beyond the classroom. When we talk about Yallā, like I said, just like with authentic materials, we're going to talk more in examples about how Yallā looks at that. But this is another one of our major challenges that we face. An additional point that comes up when we look at the classroom are dynamics and individual differences. Our students are not coming from the same place. Many students are coming from a diverse collection of language aptitudes, motivations, ages, genders, cultural backgrounds, and sometimes including both heritage and non-heritage learners. This diversity presents a challenge for teachers, as a single approach or pace may not effectively meet all student expectations. So for example, like heritage learners may already understand spoken Arabic but lack reading or writing skills, while non-heritage learners would have to start from scratch without reading or speaking skills. These differences can create major imbalances in participation, engagement, and progress, and make it difficult to design lessons that are effective and accessible to all students in the classroom. Another big point that we have to talk about, of course, is when it comes to Arabic, we have kind of a unique setting in language diversity. Learners are expected to master both modern standard Arabic and a dialect, such as Egyptian or Levantine, for example. While MSA is essential for academic and professional purposes, students are often more interested in being able to communicate in real-life situations, creating a need to balance both forms of the language. This is further complicated by a mismatch between students' functional goals, for example, wanting to speak, listen, have cultural interactions, and the traditional curriculum, which tends to focus heavily on grammar, reading, and writing in the formal Arabic. Finally, the issue of dialects. Arabic is not a single unified language. It's a collection of dialects that's shaped by region, culture, and context. What's appropriate in one setting, in one cultural context and country, might not be understood or accepted in another, even when it comes to the formal setting. Therefore, we must we must, first of all, understand that diversity. We must incorporate cultural context, help students make sense of idiomatic expressions, customs, and social norms that are deeply embedded within the language. And without this framing, students may struggle to apply the language appropriately or misunderstand its deeper meaning. Another challenge that happens less at the student level or the classroom level, but happens more at kind of the meta level of creating constructive materials, is aligning the materials that we use in the Arabic language classroom with recognized proficiency standards, like ACTFL, or the European framework, and combining that with Arabic or the realities of the Arabic language. So each of these kind of these proficiency standards offer detailed level descriptors, but they are designed primarily with Indo-European languages in mind, and often do not reflect the unique linguistic and social linguistic nature of Arabic. To give a very brief return back to our conditional sentence, in order to know the conditional sentence in Arabic, you need to know the past, the present, the future. You need to have a working knowledge of the different moods of Arabic verbs, something that you don't have to do if you were going to look at the conditional sentence, a basic conditional sentence, for example, in English. And so therefore, you might be able to look at a conditional sentence much earlier in English and with a proficiency standard, whereas in Arabic, you would need to do it a little bit later on once students are a bit more comfortable with the use the tenses and moods of verbs. Moreover, Arabic grammar structure, scripts, and root-based vocabulary system make progress slower, especially for non-heritage learners. A student, for example, who would reach A2 in Spanish after a simple semester may be at a lower level in Arabic because of Arabic's complexity. This makes both alignment with these proficiency standards difficult and hard to create materials that both serve the needs of the language learners while also matching with curriculum standards and progression levels at either the program level or the institutional level. And so this brings us, this is kind of our main summary of big problems that we see when we look at Arabic language teaching. And to kind of provide a set of responses to that, we're introducing to you now the Yallā series. So at the moment, there are two parts that are currently available. The third part is coming, inshallah, in 2026. It covers from complete beginners, all three parts will cover from a complete beginner to an advanced level of modern standard Arabic. It implements recent developments in second language acquisition theory, research findings, and incorporates the experience of all three of the authors. As I mentioned before, I'm only involved in the third part, and Shokry and David Nanskavel, both at McGill, did parts 1 and parts 2. And so this is kind of a reflection of both the theory, the challenges, and the experience of everybody involved, and ultimately gives the students tools to develop effective learning strategies and grammar for themselves to help kind of create or to help build kind of a language learner that can move on beyond the classroom. And to speak more about those specifics, I'm going to now hand it over to Shokry, who's going to tell you more specifically about each of the challenges that I spoke about before and how Yallā presents solutions to that.
Right. Thank you very much, Brian. Okay. Textbooks 1 and 2 offer carefully curated selection of reading and listening materials designed specifically for language learners. These texts are purposefully crafted to introduce new vocabulary and grammatical structures, while also reinforcing previously learned language. By controlling the difficulty level and linguistic input, these materials ensure that students, especially those at the lower to higher intermediate levels, can comprehend the content without feeling overwhelmed. The readings in textbook 1 and 2 are semantically complete. They use vocabulary that's clear, meaningful, and appropriate to the context, ensuring that learners can understand what is communicated, what is being communicated. The texts are completely conceptually complete. They present ideas in logic order. For example, the text has beginning, middle, and end. Moreover, appropriate connectors are used to link sentences and paragraphs, including markers of time and consequences. These features enhance clarity and help learners to follow the flow of the ideas more easily. The sentences in the reading, listening texts include examples of previously learned or newly introduced grammatical structures. So for this lesson, for example, the focus was on the future tense. So you can always see that the future markers are used in this text. Also, when we use non-authentic materials, teachers can always use them as model to develop productive skills such as speaking, writing, and also they can use it, like for example, in our textbook, we use them also in our many projects, which we are going to talk about it later. So here, for example, this piece is taken from Yallā, and that's after the lesson that was introduced about Obama's trip. So here, after the lesson, students can actually use this as speaking activity. Here is another one that also encourages students to write about a trip that they are going to do it. And this actually, after they have also, were exposed to the lesson. As I said, the readings are semantically complete, that they use vocabulary that's clear, meaningful, and appropriate to the context, ensuring that students can understand what's being said. So, for example, all the words, or most of the words that are embedded in this text, can be used in daily life interaction or situations. They align with the student's proficiency level. New vocabulary are supported by gloss right here. They are conceptually, of course, complete. Ideas are in logic and also coherent matter. Clear structure. It has beginning, middle, and end. Focus on a single topic. Appropriate connectors are used, right? Cause and effect connectors. The sentence include also previously and newly introduced grammar. So here, the lesson has a lot of structures that students have studied before. For example, الإضافة, اسم والصفة, الاسم الموصول, and also the future. Time constraint and limited exposure. That's an issue. So Yallā books 1 and 2 tackle these by focusing on real life and communication based activities that makes every minute of the learning counts. The textbook also include wide range of speaking activities such as role play, for example, this one, and interviews, which simulate real life situation. These help students move from passive understanding to active language learning use while reinforcing grammar knowledge. To support learning outside of the class, Yallā offers audio and video recordings to build listening skills. The companion website include many projects. So, for example, this part on the right left-hand side actually is taken from the mini project, which is on the companion website and includes that actual activity, encourages students to focus on the 4 skills, where students complete speaking tasks like role play and conducting interview. In essence, Yallā uses communicative approach that maximize limited contact hours and give students meaningful practice exposure to Arabic in and beyond the classroom. Yallā also employed actually the flipped classroom model to address the challenge of limited contact hours and minimize exposure and minimize exposure outside the classroom. In this approach, students complete reading and grammar exercises before class, allowing them to absorb new vocabulary and concepts at their own pace. When students come to class, they are better prepared with questions in mind and ready to engage. This benefits all students, especially quieter students who can learn from peer discussion. Instructors begin in this model by checking understanding, often by reviewing grammar questions. If students grasp the material, class time is used for interactive activities that activate their knowledge. If not, a quick review is done before continuing. This model maximizes classroom time for speaking, listening, and collaboration. Classroom time is used for interactive pair and group work activities such as role play, problem solving, information gap activities, discussion, language games, think, pair, share, jigsaw reading or listening, and also dictative gloss. Classroom dynamic. The flipped classroom approach effectively support learners with different levels of language aptitude by requiring them to engage with materials before coming to the class. In class, as I said, the instructor encouraged them to work collaboratively. This strategy allows a slightly proficient student to reinforce the knowledge by explaining content, while less proficient students benefit from receiving input in a more accessible and collaborative format. The mini project actually encourage students of varying aptitude benefit from the speaking component of the mini project. These tasks require collaborative work outside the classroom, such as creating dialogues, role play, which promote meaningful language use in low pressure setting. Yallā textbook series is carefully designed to meet the diverse needs and expectation of learners with varying level of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation by incorporating a wide variety of reading, listening, speaking, and writing activities. Gender representation is balanced in character, roles, and scenarios, avoiding stereotypes while reflecting the cultural norms of the Arab-speaking context. Yallā recognized that the heritage learner may have strong oral and listening skills, but weak literacy, while non-heritage learners may need more help with listening and speaking. Materials in Yallā textbook are designed to allow both types of learners bring their strengths into the classroom and learn from each other. Learning diversity. Our teaching experience has shown that students who first build a solid foundation in modern standard Arabic and then learn a dialect are far less likely to confuse the two language variety. Our textbook on MSA actually focus on MSA through all chapters: Egyptian colloquial Arabic, is offered separately via the companion website. Separate curriculum has separate curriculum rather than integrating ECA or Egyptian colloquial Arabic within the MSA content. The Egyptian colloquial Arabic is presented independently through its own grammar explanation, exercises, reading texts, listening texts, and speaking activities. We also have chosen to focus on a single dialect, which is Egyptian colloquial Arabic, because it is the most widely understood variety. Egyptian colloquial Arabic share similarities with Palestinian and Jordanian dialects and has more speakers than all the dialects combined. Additionally, many instructors are already familiar with the Egyptian colloquial Arabic and can teach it confidently, even if it's not their native dialect. Aligning materials with recognized proficiency standards. The textbook in Modern Standard Arabic are aligned to acceptable extent with the Actual Proficiency Guidelines, though some discrepancies exist. These are because Yallā textbook accounts not only for proficiency, but also for linguistic competency. In particular, the series integrates the 4 skills with grammatical competence, while also taking into account the developmental stage of language acquisition. We know that language learning is cumulative process. From the grammatical point of view, that means that the structure cannot be fully acquired unless the prerequisites constituency have been previously and sequentially learned. Here is an example. An Arabic learner cannot expected to successfully perform speaking tasks involving the real conditional sentence, such as إذ لم تدرس جيدا فلن تنجح في الامتحان القادم, unless they have already been exposed to and acquired the meaning, form, and use of key components of the sentence, such as verb tense, modes, and their negations. When essential components are skipped or underemphasized, students often misuse the structure, leading to fossilized errors that are difficult to reverse, even with corrective feedback or remedial instructions. To illustrate, the actual guidelines suggest that learners at the intermediate level should be able to ask and give directions. However, in Arabic, performing this task requires correct and fluent use of the imperative mode. To reach this point, students must have already mastered the verb tenses, all the modes, for example, inductive, subjunctive, jussive, and finally, the imperative. We argue that most learners at this stage are not yet developmentally ready to perform it accurately. We have placed the imperative and the conditional sentence at the intermediate high level. Guided discovery method. or in teaching grammar. Drawing on the extent of our extensive teaching experience, we have found that students often struggle with grammatical concepts and need to overlook and tend to overlook key nuances. To address this point, the textbook adopts a guided discovery approach where learners are led step by step to notice and understand grammatical structures based on provided materials. So, for example, linguistic data and questions. So here, the linguistic data is actually sentences, and the vocabulary embedded in these sentences are taken from the chapter that we are studying right now. This is because students can only focus on one thing, either on the meaning or the form, right? So here we want students to focus on the form. So we are giving the students the linguistic data and lead them to inductively get the rules through questions, right? Additionally, the textbook includes grammar reference section that students are regularly directed to consult. This section is designed to support grammar acquisition by drawing parallels between Arabic and English grammatical structure, making it easier for students to understand and retain new concepts. The grammar reference also includes pedagogical and productive exercises to help students master the grammatical concept and produce it accurately, meaningfully in face-to-face interaction. The upcoming Yallā Part 3, designed for advanced level learners and set to be published in 2026, focuses strongly on clear, measurable learning objectives aligned with actual proficiency guidelines. At this level, the textbook targets advanced to low, advanced low to advanced high, depending on the program placement. Objectives will include understand semi-authentic abstract texts from news, literature, and academic sources. Also, it will engage students to extended spoken scores such as debates, presentations, and interview. It will also help students produce coherent, well-structured writing in formal register. Will help also students to understand sociolinguistic and cultural codes, including idiomatic expressions, by clearly defining what learners should achieve at this level. The textbook includes, encourage actually the instructors or enables instructors to plan instruction more effectively, access program more accurately, and help students reach academic, professional, and heritage-related goals with Arabic. Brian.
So as we're mentioning, to give you a practical example, we're gonna look at particularly what we've done in terms of chapter 2. So the main topic of chapter 2 looks at Arabic calligraphy, its history, its application, and uses that as kind of the framework and theme for the section or for the chapter. As I mentioned, or as Shokry mentioned, actually, this book targets advanced low to advanced high. We look at curated abstract texts from news, literature, and academic sources. We encourage students to engage in extended spoken discourse, such as engaging in debates, forming opinions, providing long-timed presentations, and conducting interviews with each other to enhance dialogues. In terms of writing, students are encouraged to produce coherent, well-structured, uh, long form uh, long form passages in the formal register, and also to get to in a bit more depth of the social linguistic and cultural cues with a particular focus on idiomatic expressions and more complex connectors that go in the language.
The reading and the listening texts introduce students to actually encourage students to complex ideas, academic and low frequency vocabulary. Also, it introduces students to diverse cultural and societal perspectives from across the Arab and the Muslim world. Right. Like here, for example, we have another text that actually talks about introducing the students to the Arabic calligraphy and the vocabulary that are embedded here are of low frequency and also academic vocab. After each reading, there will be intensive or extensive listening that is also connected to the topic. And further in the chapter, there's also extensive reading that is connected to the topic, but it's taken from a different angle. So, for example, here it's the interest of the Ottoman, by the Arabic calligraphy or in the Arabic calligraphy. Also, in the chapter, we needed to give part or the textbook has a section that focuses on the culture that is also still connected to the main topic of the chapter. Right.
And then when it comes to grammar, I mean, I think this is one of the really strong points that I've personally liked when using this with students is this kind of self-discovery method where each chapter takes a grammar point, gives students a set of sentences in Arab, simpler sentences in Arabic that use that grammar point, and have them extract the main points of that outside of the class with with constant reference to the grammar reference that's always provided at the end of the book. Then when we can come into class, focus on these more advanced points and look at application and use our time more wisely. So this is for an example. This is an example of the grammar section from chapter 2, talking about the maf'ul mutlaq and maf'ul ma'hu. And then the next part is the idioms. And this is a collection. This is what I mean by one of the idioms. And idiomatic expressions, I don't necessarily mean longer ones. I mean even shorter ones that tend to add a real level of depth, especially to a student's writing and speaking skills. Whenever they're able to produce and use these connectors um, and use them properly and in the correct setting, it really adds to the next level of their language production.
The upcoming textbook will encourage learners to move beyond surface level of comprehension by engaging with semi-authentic texts that present varied viewpoints of social and cultural topic through guided questions and analytical tasks. Students will learn to compare arguments, evaluate evidence, and interpret meaning in the context. These tasks are designed to promote deeper engagement with the material and to foster independent reflective thinking, key skills at which is a key skills at the advanced level.
And then as one final point, when it comes to writing, we want students to begin to branch out from the themes themselves and to start adding in their voice as well, which is one of the challenges that we talked about before, is having student voices included in the discussion. And therefore, all the writing activities, especially once we get to part 3 and a higher level, encourage students to make arguments, make reviews, make summaries, reviews, and then begin to argue and to branch out and to add their own voice into it. So I think this was the last part of our slides. Thank you very much, everybody. We're happy to answer questions, and we look forward to your input and discussion.
We did have a question from Clarissa, who said, we are starting with Yallā Part 1 this year. Yallā Part 2 will be next year. My question is, can I use the Egyptian materials for my Egyptian class this spring?
Yep. Yeah, of course you can. The Egyptian colloquial Arabic textbook is available online. You can download it from Cambridge website. It is actually going to be under the instructor resource or source, right? So you can download it. It also comes with audios and grammar, explanation and so on, as we talked about before. So you can, yes, you can use it, and it is available for free.
And I think that ties into another question that was asked about if the books come with an online platform. If so, which one is it? I think you partially answered that, but I'm not sure if you want to add anything on that about the online resources or anything like that.
I would jump in and add that absolutely it's colloquial, but the online platform includes a lot more than that. The online platform includes an answer key. It includes an audio recording for all of the texts and dialogues. It includes and like we talked about in the presentation, the mini projects which add a whole other range of theme connected and theme appropriate material to each chapter that allows instructors to use either as an assessment tool or as enrichment material as well.
Great. And then we had another question from Elizabeth. I'm wondering if the authentic materials include literary works, or are they taken primarily from contemporary online media sources?
Go ahead, Brian.
I would say it's a wide range of material. Of course, this is not a literary. This is not for literary Arabic. The main focus is modern standard Arabic, which includes literature. So, for example, Book 2 has a chapter on poetry that provides both classical and modern examples. Nazik al-Malaika and Majnun Layla were the two examples used in the chapter in poetry. So poetry is there. When we talk about storytelling, there's an entire chapter dedicated to Joha and storytelling in the Arabic tradition. When it comes to Book 3 includes some literary connections. For example, when we talk about the Hajj, which is one chapter, and the concept of pilgrimage, not just in Islam, but across religious settings. When we talk about, we also use a lot of academic literature because that's what students also are starting to get into. So, for example, there's a chapter on higher education and challenges about higher education in the Arab world. That also deals with academic literature. So the answer is yes. The materials do include literary works. However, it's theme and level appropriate.
Right. And also, it has some culture, for example, the development of the cinema in the Arab world. That's also another that we have already added. It talks about the development of the Arabic movies, cinemas, and also the contribution that some of the minorities have actually, put to actually make the development of the Arabic, to develop actually the cinemas in the Arab world.
Okay, and then I think we have a question that's more of a clarifying question. Do these two parts represent Arabic culture and dialects, or just the Egyptian one?
The spoken Arabic that is actually included in the textbook just focus on Egyptian colloquial Arabic. And that's, first of all, is that the two authors, David Nanskaville and I am Egyptian, and David Nanskaville is familiar with Egyptian colloquial Arabic, so I understand the Egyptian colloquial Arabic. I think the ins and outs of it, but I definitely do not understand the grammatical, for example, the morphology, some of the expression of the other Arabic varieties. Right. So I can't, include something that I do not actually understand or know how to write and talk about. Right. Besides, also the Egyptian colloquial Arabic is widely used. Most of the Arab people can understand the Egyptian colloquial Arabic. Instructors themselves can actually teach it, even if it's not their variety or spoken variety.
Yeah, and I would just jump in as well and say وانا كمان يعني انا امريكاني بس انا خلفيه مصريه كمان يعني I'm an American, but my linguistic background also has a lot more to do with Egyptian Arabic. However, I would say that, like, although, I mean, let me, first of all say that the textbook itself, whether part one, two, or three, the actual printed textbook itself and the main material is focusing on MSA. And that's why we strongly believe that getting a firm grounding in MSA is critical before moving into a dialect, and that a dialect should only be moved into as supplementary. So the Egyptian colloquial material that we're talking about right now is available on the website as supplementary material, as supplementary chapters, and is not in the actual printed textbook. We do not use that integrative approach in the textbook. However, what I would say is I saw a question pop up in the chat about other dialects as well. I mean, I would say that there is definitely an open door to talk about using other dialects, implementing it in the classroom, and I think it's a big discussion that needs to be had. But when it comes to the core of the language learning, I first coming to it first as a learner and then as an instructor, seeing that, getting that firm grounding in Fusha seems to be the best way forward, especially when you start to see the results at the higher levels.
We have a question in the chat. Based on your teaching experience in the writing of Yallā, what tried and true techniques do you recommend for advanced Arabic learners who are trying to keep up with the load of vocab words they learned and the new ones they are hoping to acquire at the advanced level?
From the experience that I've had, it's about getting students to understand the kind of inner workings of Arabic, because Arabic as the trilateral root system, and learning the root system and learning the patterns and getting students into that, like the way that Arabic functions, not to look at vocabulary as something that has to be memorized, that's something that has to be one-to-one translated into English. That by doing that, I mean, I just concluded a class a few weeks ago, and the main issue with the student is that student would just immediately, as soon as we take a word, translate it into English and memorize it back and forth between the English. And my main goal as an instructor was to get them into how does Arabic work as a language? And Yallā does that by starting out with the vocabulary, but very quickly getting you into these patterns. And book 3, for example, when we get to the advanced level, each chapter talks about the semantic meanings of verbs. And we've added that into each chapter. So like, for example, talking about connections between verb form in the Hans Wehr system, the kind of verb form 2 and verb form 5, التفعيل والتفاعل. Looking at those differences and the semantic connections between them and learning kind of like what's behind the curtain in the Arabic grammar system or the Arabic grammar and vocabulary system is for me personally and what I use with students to help them learn vocabulary. Did that make sense at all?
Yes. Yeah.
I think we're just about at time. Let's see if we can get one quick question in before. This one really quickly is, does part 3 include the script of the listening material used in it as well?
Like, do the listening text include, does the listening audio include the text as well? And the answer is it does. And the
Yes.
thing is, they're actually done as an activity. And part of each listening includes, and for example, the intensive listening includes an activity that has students fill in the blank to listen. So it adds to that. Shokry, go ahead if you wanted to add more to that.
Yes. Yes. For example, in Yallā part 1 and part 2, the intensive reading text actually is coming also with audio recordings. So the interlocutor actually reads the text at like acceptable speed, and that actually helps students to improve pronunciation and also give them another exposure to the vocab and make a connection between meaning and form. So yes, textbook 3 will come also with audio recordings. I mean, the reading text, the main reading text. And of course, we have additionally, we have another for each chapter. We do have 2 listening activities. One that is intensive and the other one that's extensive, and both of them deal with the same topics but from different angles, as I said. And the listening materials also can be used as model for writing and speaking.
I think that is the last question that we have time for. As I mentioned, Brian, Shokry, any last parting words before we go ahead and finish off this session?
No, just would
I'm
like to
good.
thank everybody for coming to us. But if you have, yes, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was going to say the same thing. I didn't have anything. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much for everybody, and thanks for listening to us. Thanks.